Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share something personal today on the show. Long back, when I was a little girl, back in the 90s, I used to see a small magazine being delivered every month to our house. My father was an ardent reader of this magazine. And as my sister and I grew up, this magazine became firstly a source to improve our English, as was the general practice at the time. And secondly, a book which would tell us wonderful, heartwarming stories and clean, funny jokes. I'm talking about the Reader's Digest, the good old magazine and an all-time favorite across generations, a household name in fact, which is now shutting operations in the UK. After 86 years and hundreds of editions, the magazine has cited financial challenges as its reason to shut shop. Editor-in-Chief Eva McKeeve thanked colleagues and said, "After 86 wonderful years, I'm very sad to share that Reader's Digest UK has come to an end. Unfortunately, the company just couldn't withstand the financial pressures of today's unforgiving magazine publishing landscape and has ceased to trade." That's what she said. But remember, back in February 1922, DeWitt Wallace and his wife Leela Acheson launched the first Reader's Digest issue. Wallace, who's a war veteran, had sustained shrapnel wounds while fighting in France in World War I, and during his treatment, he read and condensed multiple popular magazines of the day. He made his prototype issue in 1920, 31 articles in 64 pages. But publishers weren't interested. 18 of them thought that the Reader's Digest wasn't commercially promising, especially because Wallace was adamant that illustrations and advertisements is something that he doesn't want in his magazine. Well, the rest, they say, is history. Decades later, here we are talking about the end of an era, but it also reflects how the world around us has changed for better or for worse. Let's dig a little deeper into it and understand the legacy that the magazine leaves behind. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Mr. Sanjay Jha. He's an author. I'm also joined by Dr. Sumita Mukherjee. She's an author and academician. Good evening and namaskar to both of you. Welcome on Mirror Now. Sanjay Jha, let me start with you first. And before I get into what the Reader's Digest means for you and the legacy that it leaves behind for you, let me first ask you a quick question. Are you a print person or are you a digital person?
Yeah, at heart, I remain a hardcore print person. To give you an example, I buy books. I actually haven't got Kindle yet. And that should establish the fact that I believe, when you read, there is the joy of holding a book in your hand, making a point, scribbling on it, carrying it by your bedside, kind of just looking at the cover over and over again. I think there's a certain magic to reading that can only come with holding a book or a magazine. So my short answer to you is it is actually the print.
Okay, let me now talk to you about the Reader's Digest. I'm sure you also have a lot of memories, the good old little magazine that came with some very heartwarming stories. And as one of my colleagues in the newsroom was saying, clean humor is what we got. Clean jokes is what we got in that magazine as children.
Well, is that question to me?
Yes, Mr. Jha, it's for you.
Yeah. So Shreya, let me tell you that, when we were growing up, I mean, Reader's Digest was something for which my sister and my brothers would actually wait for with breathless anticipation. And if you got that as a gift, as a subscription gift for 1 year from your parents, I mean, that was the best thing you could ever expect. And frankly, I mean, I can tell you that my love for the English language had a lot to do with the vocab quiz that you had to do, where there were 20 words and you had to choose an option and you hoped you hit the jackpot. And actually, that's how one developed a love for the language. And there were extracts from these novels or nonfiction stories. And of course, it was peppered with such fascinating human interest stories. There were things of interest for each and every one across vocations or age profile. And I think in a great number of ways, I would call our generation as the RD generation, because I think we grew up reading as a habit. And I sometimes worry, I think let's accept it that yes, You have to adapt to new trends. The digital is the way forward. We all know it. We all recognize it. But I want to share something with you very honestly. I find today's people very well informed, today's young generation very well informed because there's a lot of information available at your fingertips. But I find people not reading as much. And I also see a drop in the quality of writing. Probably it's got to do with, WhatsApp and, using abbreviated terms and, you know, IDK for I don't know kind of stuff. I definitely feel that we have
Hmm.
lost that passionate love affair with one of the most intricate and fascinating aspects of development, which is love for languages.
Hmm. Hmm. You know, Sanjay Jha, if you and I say this to the teenagers, the ones who are in their 20s, young adults, they would call us old fashioned and they'll say, now you've gotten old and you've just not moved with the times. You don't know how the world has evolved. But Dr. Sumita Mukherjee, do you resonate with that? You know, times have changed. The feel of the book, the smell of a new book, the feel of that paper in your hands, that probably has reduced, and it has got to do more with convenience, more with the fast moving life that you, I, and everybody around us live.
Yes, Shreya, I do agree with this. I do agree with all kind of new revolutions, the digital revolution that has come out. But we belong to that age group where we used to read books, where we knew the depth of the topic would come into a book and so on. But now we find that the information that are coming out, most of the information, the students or the audience or the consumers, you can say, that they do not know what is right and what is wrong, what to read and what, more importantly, is not to read. So that becomes more pathetic in today's scenario when the core of the knowledge does not reach the readers. Actually, the readers digest what they have done. It's very in short, we cannot define it in such a small area. Readers digest has done its wonderful work, but now there is, you can say, a
Hmm.
concentration crisis, you can say, where people go on to scroll and scroll in the digital media. So what we find is that people do not have a habit of reading also, and they do not concentrate more on whatever knowledge they can get. They are more into entertainment type of
Hmm.
things that they are
Hmm.
basically pondering
But you know,
upon.
important point that you make there, Dr. Mukherjee, Sanjay Jha, you know, the fact that one of the things that have been associated with print magazines and in general with print has been credibility, has been the trustworthiness that is attached to it. The written word was always trusted. You know, you could say anything on television, but people would go back and check in the newspapers whether it's there. Has that perhaps changed, or are people still going by the written word and going by what has been printed more than what is being told on social media or television channels?
The trust or the credibility factor with
Mr.
print
Jha, please
will
unmute
remain,
yourself.
I
Yeah.
think, will remain right in front. And I think in the digital world, you and I and all of us realize how susceptible we are to fake news, to all kinds of distortions, because people have the flexibility to play around with things. And therefore, people have become a lot more suspicious. In politics, we use the term WhatsApp University. The whole communication or the information disinformation campaigns can be extremely misleading, and a lot of people use that for gaslighting people. I think print has a remarkable degree of, shall we say, sanctity to it, because when you say it in writing, it means something. I can tell you that I remember the generation in which we grew up. If someone loved you, you waited for them to write it on a card saying I love you, or in a letter, and that's when you felt, oh my god, the girl sincerely cares for me, right? When it comes in writing. And in today's world, I'm sure people want it on a text. So I think there is a beauty to the print that is, in my opinion, unparalleled. And I definitely feel that Reader's Digest was like widening our universe. And remember, Shreya, the times that I grew up in, going abroad was unheard of. I mean, very, very super affluent people or the really rich could, go to foreign destinations. And when you read a Reader's Digest, because it was so global in its content, You felt as if you have gone to Paris, or you went to New York, or you had gone to some other part of the world that you only dreamt of. So reading is basically widening your universe. And I think you end up being more traveled and therefore a lot more wiser.
And the fact that, reading gives way to a lot of creative imagination. You can pick up a book and I can imagine a character in a certain way, in my own way. You can imagine the same character in a different way, with different clothes, with different kind of hairstyle. Everything can be different. That perhaps has it been lost, Dr. Mukherjee? That creative
Yes,
imagination, you see a lot of creative people
yes,
around
Shreya,
you. You
yes,
see a
Shreya.
lot of creative works being out there. But has that evolved perhaps?
Correctly put it. We will always see that students, most oftenly I'll say that the youngsters, they are not into that creativity that at that time the print media, that the reading books that used to generate the imagination, everything is in your front, in front of your eyes. So you are not able to imagine now, but in a book, in a story, in a print media, you can always imagine, and that imagination help you to become more creative. You can imagine and you can think about a new creativity. But now we feel that it has been lost, and people are more into creating things that are already available in the net.
All right, let me then ask you my last question, Sanjay Jha. The reason that has been cited to shut shop for Reader's Digest UK has been the financial challenges that it faced, along with the changing landscape of publishing and print. Do you see that really evolving now? From here on, do you see actually print really sort of sustaining itself in the coming years, or completely, we'll do away with print completely and we'll only have digital platforms? Because I ask because a lot of newspapers and magazines in the US and UK have already shut shop and they've completely shifted to their digital platforms.
Shreya, I remain very optimistic that there will be a print which will have a more dynamic hybrid revenue model with digital content. And the reason why I say so is because, you have seen how a lot of foreign newspapers in domestic, look at our success stories in India, where many mainline media has created its own parallel digital base, which is the way it should be. And I do feel slightly disappointed because this was coming for a while. I mean, we all knew that 5G will happen, downloads will be quicker, the younger generation is going to be introduced to a lot of AI and modern tech. So one would have expected RD to be a lot more innovative in terms of figuring out how do you grab a certain audience and keep it and allow your digital model to probably become bigger than your print model. And those who want print could have an option. So today, for example, if you look at a lot of magazines and others, you get the option to have print, or you get the option for digital, or both. And mostly people opt for digital or digital plus print option. So I think in a great number of ways that is a bit of a disappointment, because I think RD is such a classic example of how an entire generation of people grew up all over the world loving the simple stories that I think became a way of life. And I think it's in a great number of ways a tragic end, but I do hope that the archives it has remains accessible to the public, and who should be more than happy to pay for it, because it is quite a masterpiece collection.
Exactly, what I was getting to, Sanjay Jha. The fact that it might be ending, but thankfully we have the archives, we have the printed version still around, so we can go back to that simplicity and that nostalgia and that old world charm that Reader's Digest leaves us with. We'll leave it there. Sanjay Jha and Dr. Sumita Mukherjee, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
to both of you for joining us on Mirror Now and sharing your thoughts.